Your phone buzzes on the kitchen counter. Raise approved, effective immediately. You read it twice before it feels real. Chest loosening like a belt notch you didn't know was tight. Minutes later, you're scrolling car listings. Tyler texts a photo of a new watch, still in the box. "We eat now," he writes. Here's what nobody tells you about that feeling. In the seconds right after good news, you make a decision that decides the next 10 years, without ever noticing you made it. I call it the gap discipline. Keep it, and a raise makes you free. Break it, and a raise just makes you busier. Stay with me, because in a few minutes I'll show you exactly where your last raise actually went, why it felt like nothing changed even though your income did, and the one number that already predicts which version of you wins this. My name is Marcus, and this is Whitfield Money. What happened to you in that 15 minutes with the car listings is not a personal failure. It is a reflex, and it is baked into almost everyone who has ever gotten good news about money. The raise didn't change your life. The reflex did. It shows up the same way for almost everyone. A nurse getting her first shift differential, a contractor landing a bigger client, someone getting promoted into their first management role. Different jobs, different numbers, same 15 minutes. The details change. The reflex never does. Here's the strange part. Tyler didn't do anything you wouldn't have done. 3 years ago, he got his first real raise, about $9,000 a year more than he was making. Within a month, he had upgraded his car lease. Not because the old car broke. It ran fine. No warning lights, no real complaints. It just didn't feel like a raise anymore, sitting in a car he'd already had for 2 years. A year later, second raise, close to $12,000 more. That one became a bigger apartment, one bedroom he uses maybe 4 nights a month, paid for every single month whether he's home or not. He told you at the time it was about space, about finally having room to breathe. Last year, third raise, the biggest yet, almost $18,000. That one became the watch you saw in the photo, the one that arrived the same week as the raise, like the two things were always going to happen together. Add it up. Tyler is earning close to $40,000 a year more than he was 3 years ago. His savings account has less in it than it did 3 years ago. Not because he is bad with money, because every single raise got absorbed within weeks by a lifestyle upgrade that felt proportional to the good news and completely disconnected from anything he actually needed. Ask him how much he's saving right now, and he'll tell you he's still figuring that part out. He's been figuring it out since the first raise. This is the part almost nobody names out loud. You are not supposed to feel richer when you get a raise. You are supposed to feel like yourself, just with a wider gap between what comes in and what goes out. But that is not what it feels like, is it? It feels like permission. Permission to finally get the thing you have been telling yourself you would get once you could afford it. The raise doesn't just increase your income, it increases what your brain quietly decides you deserve. And the more raises you get, the faster that quiet decision gets made, because the reflex gets practiced. By the third raise, Tyler didn't even deliberate. He just knew what came next. That pressure isn't coming from your bank account. It is coming from everywhere else. The version of a life you are supposed to be building once you can afford to build it. It's the raise-adjacent version of keeping up with everyone else. Except this time, the comparison isn't with a neighbor's car. It's with the version of your own life that suddenly feels possible the moment the number changes. Nobody sends you the memo. It just shows up as a feeling, right around the same time as the direct deposit. You didn't choose that feeling, but you do choose what you do with it, and that choice is the entire game. The gap discipline is the only thing standing between you and that feeling. It is simple to define and brutally hard to practice. The space between what you earn and what you spend has to grow every time your income grows, not stay flat, and definitely not shrink. Most people don't even let it stay flat. They let the gap shrink, quietly, one upgrade at a time, until a person earning twice what they used to earn has the exact same amount of breathing room they had before, or less. Here's what makes this worse the further you climb. A bigger raise doesn't shrink the reflex, it amplifies it. Someone getting a $4,000 raise upgrades a phone case. Someone getting a $40,000 raise upgrades a house. The reflex scales with the number, which means the people who most need the gap discipline are usually the ones who feel it the least, because they can technically afford almost anything they reach for. Being able to afford something and it being worth the trade are two completely different questions, and the raise never asks you the second one. Only you can. Let me show you the math, because the math is the only thing that actually changes behavior here. Picture two people, same starting job, same starting salary, $65,000 a year, same coffee order most mornings, same gym membership, same 4 raises over 10 years, ending at $110,000. Identical income the entire way through, at every single point in time. The only thing that ever diverged was what happened to each raise in the first month after it landed. The first one keeps the gap discipline. Every raise, 70% of the increase goes straight into an investment account, automatically, on the day it lands. He never sees the extra money in his checking account long enough to get used to spending it. He lives on the same core budget for years, adjusting only for inflation, not for ambition. The second one lets the gap shrink. Every raise, most of the increase becomes lifestyle within a season. Better apartment, newer car, more takeout, more subscriptions, more of everything that felt like a natural next step and never once felt like an indulgence in the moment. 10 years later, same income, same 10 years worked, same everything on paper. The first one has built close to $210,000 in investments, growing quietly the entire time. The second one has close to $15,000 saved, most of it built in the first year, before the raises even started. Same income. A gap of nearly $200,000, and the only variable that moved was what happened to each raise in the first few weeks after it landed. And that gap doesn't stay flat, it compounds. Run the same pattern for 20 years instead of 10, through a few more raises and a few more decisions, exactly like the first 4, and the person who kept the gap discipline isn't looking at savings anymore. He's looking at real financial independence, the kind where a job becomes optional instead of required. The person who let the gap shrink is looking at the same paycheck-to-paycheck math he started with, just with nicer things attached to it. That gap didn't come from one bad decision. It came from 4 small decisions, each one completely reasonable in the moment, each one invisible on its own, each one following the exact same reflex you felt 15 minutes after your last raise. So let's talk about how you actually keep the gap discipline, because knowing about the reflex doesn't stop it. You need something structural in the way. Rule 1. Automate the raise before you feel it. The day your new salary hits, before the first paycheck even arrives, set an automatic transfer for a fixed percentage of the increase, straight into an account you don't check daily. Not your full raise. Somewhere between half and 3/4 of it is realistic and sustainable. The rest is yours to enjoy, guilt-free, because you have already protected the part that matters. Think of it as paying your future self first, the same way taxes disappear before you ever see the number. If your raise adds $400 to each paycheck, automate $280 of it before it reaches your checking account, and let the rest be the part you actually get to enjoy. The money you never see in your checking account is money you were never tempted to spend. If this is already sounding familiar, a like helps this reach someone who just opened that raise email an hour ago. Rule 2. Freeze your baseline for 90 days after every raise. Do not upgrade anything discretionary in the first 3 months. Not the car, not the apartment, not the wardrobe. This is not permanent deprivation, it's a delay. Most lifestyle upgrades that feel urgent in week 1 feel optional by week 12. Tyler never tried this. Every upgrade he made happened inside the first 2 weeks, while the excitement was still doing all the deciding. The freeze gives the reflex time to fade before you act on it, instead of acting while the feeling is still loud. If you're not subscribed yet, this is a good moment. I break down one of these decisions every week. Rule 3. Run the same paycheck test before any upgrade tied to a raise. Ask yourself one honest question. Would I make this exact purchase on my old salary, using savings I already have? If the answer is no, and the only reason you're considering it now is that new number on your pay stub, That's not a need. That's the reflex talking, dressed up as a decision. This one question kills more unnecessary upgrades than any budget ever will, because it strips away the timing. A purchase that only makes sense the week a raise lands was never really about the purchase. Say the raise is real, and the upgrade is a nicer couch. Would you have bought that same couch 2 months ago, out of savings you already had, no raise involved? If the honest answer is yes, buy it and don't think twice. If the honest answer is that it only became a couch you needed the week the number changed, put it down and check back in 90 days. Most of the time, you won't even remember wanting it. Rule 4. Separate identity upgrades from functional upgrades. A functional upgrade solves an actual limitation, a car that keeps breaking down, a home office that doesn't fit 2 monitors. An identity upgrade solves a feeling, the feeling that your life should look different now that your number does. The car that keeps stalling on the highway is a functional upgrade. The car that runs perfectly but no longer matches the version of yourself the raise made you imagine is an identity upgrade wearing a functional excuse. Both are allowed. Only one of them should ever be funded by a raise you haven't lived with yet. If you want me to run these numbers against a raise you're actually looking at, put the details in the comments, and I'll build it into a future breakdown. Rule 5. Track your gap, not your income. Most people watch their salary number climb and assume that means they're winning. Track the space between what comes in and what goes out instead, as a raw number, every single month. A rising salary with a shrinking gap isn't progress. It's the same financial position, dressed in a better outfit, moving at the same speed it always was. That number, not your salary, is the only one that tells you whether you're building freedom or just upgrading the size of the treadmill. It doesn't need a spreadsheet with 20 tabs, one number, written down on the same day every month, income minus spending. If that number is growing year over year, the gap discipline is holding. If it's flat or shrinking while your salary climbs, the reflex is winning, quietly, 1 month at a time. Rule 6. Build automatic escalation into your savings rate, tied directly to your raises, so the gap discipline holds itself even on the months you're not paying attention. If your investment contribution automatically increases by a set percentage every time your salary does, you never have to rely on willpower in the exact moment willpower is weakest, right after good news, when everything in you wants to celebrate by spending. Set it once, at a percentage you can live with, and every future raise handles itself. You won't have to remember to be disciplined. The system already did the remembering for you. If tracking your own gap discipline is part of how you're planning to handle your next raise, subscribing keeps breakdowns like this one coming every week. This is not about becoming someone who never enjoys a raise. It's about deciding, on purpose, before the feeling shows up, which part of every raise is yours to enjoy, and which part is buying you options later. A shorter number of years you have to work. A business you could start without panicking about the mortgage. A family emergency you could handle without touching a credit card. Here's the thing about the 2 people in that math I showed you. They didn't start in different places. They didn't have different jobs, different luck, or different raises. The only difference was what each of them did in the first few weeks after good news arrived, over and over, 4 separate times. Small, forgettable decisions, a gap that widened every single time, in one direction or the other. This decision doesn't happen once. It happens every single time you get good news for the rest of your working life. 5 raises, 10 raises, maybe more, each one a fresh chance to widen the gap or let it shrink a little further. Most people don't fail this decision once, dramatically. They fail it quietly, the same small way, over and over, until they look up 20 years in and can't explain where all the money went, because it never went anywhere all at once. It went $400 at a time, every time the phone buzzed. Your phone is going to buzz again eventually. Another raise, another piece of good news, another 15 minutes where your brain quietly decides what you deserve. When it happens, you now know what that feeling actually is. Not a signal to upgrade, a test of whether the gap grows or shrinks. Tyler still hasn't figured that out. 3 raises in, and he has less in savings than the day he started. None of this requires a bigger raise than the one you're about to get. It doesn't require a higher salary, a better job, or extraordinary discipline in every part of your life. It requires exactly one decision, repeated every time good news arrives. Protect the gap before the feeling gets a vote. If any part of this changed how you're going to treat your next raise, send it to someone who just got one. They're about to make the same 11-second decision you did, and this time, one of you can actually see it coming.